it is important that we understand Black history, because Black history it was the first history to be ever discovered, and the most important history in so many different ways. And why is it important? Well, because Black history help me.
My name is Sylvia Higgins. I'm 84. I came to this country in 1961 to live with my sister, Daphne, and I lived in Wood Green.
I was homeborn, yeah. So I was actually born in Tottenham, not anywhere else, not in a hospital. And pretty much all my siblings, apart from my older brother, were born actually in the house.
My parents originated from Jamaica. My dad came here in 1955. He was one of the first founding fathers of the local West Indian community. And he often used to say that you could walk for miles, right, and not see a single person of colour, right, and West Indian in the whole borough.
My parents are both Grenadian. My dad came first, I believe, but I know that my mum raised her money by helping to build the airport. How did she build the airport? She carried rocks. She carried rocks from one place to the other to get the money for her to fly. Come to English, didn't fly, but why I'm saying fly, she came on a boat because it was the cheapest way to travel. Props to my mum, she's the strongest person I know. She literally carried rocks for her to help build the airport, just for the tarmac bit. And that's how she got her money together to come over to England.
Both of my parents are from Barbados. They travelled here in the 60s. My dad was a postal worker. My mum was an auxiliary nurse. We started off in N15 in South Tottenham.
And the South Tottenham area in the late 60s, going 70s, or should I say early 60s, was the predominant Black and ethnic area. It was mainly Black, Irish and Jewish.
I've lived in Haringey all my life. I'm 26 years old and I've been in South Tottenham for all of it.
I came to England in 1964. I arrived in England as British. Immediately realised I'm Jamaican. when I came here, they let us know quite quickly. I come here, didn't know my parents. Me and my three sisters come here. It was a tough time. I landed in February, and the whole place was just white.
Yes, it was very different. I suppose coming from the Caribbean, it's a totally different environment. Coming to London was very different. Obviously the houses were different, joined together, which we weren't used to, with chimneys, with smoke. When I first arrived, I thought it was a factory. Very cold, because if you come from the tropics and you suddenly come, and I came in November '66, and it was freezing.
I'm used to it.
I came December 1962. I was 10 years old. It was cold. Never seen snow. It was actually snowing because it was 3 days before Christmas. Yeah. Me and my sister at the end there came together.
My name is Lilith Maxwell. I came with my youngest sister. At the time, my parents she had to come up with me. I was older than her. She was coming up to 12, and so they had to do it before they had to pay full fare for her.
I came 1965 with my two brothers. When we just come into this country, in them days, they used to advertise for rooms in the shop window and postcard. And the first thing you'll see, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs.
No colours.
No, they didn't say coloured. No blacks, no Irish, no dogs.
You couldn't get a room to rent. It said no black, no Irish, no dogs.
We couldn't just move in. We had to get permission from the white tenants, the white English tenants, and the neighbours to say we could actually move there.
And when I came to this country, I want to do politics because I love politics from home. There was a college in Manor House, and I went there 3 times and they refused me because I was black.
I remember when I took my first bus rides and went to Alexandra Palace, I thought I was in another country, you know, because everything was Seven Sisters School and back home, Seven Sisters School and back home. We didn't have a car. It wasn't safe to venture certain parts of Haringey.
Plus in them days, when they used to have the house party, the police used to raid it. You know, you're in there, you're boogieing, next thing you hear, sound stop. You know, them sort of thing, but it was enjoyable.
What was the house party like?
The house party, rammed.
I like to rave, right? And when I was younger, I still party now. But when I was younger, there was 2 clubs. There was Royal and there was Norwich, both in Tottenham. Royal was where you got dressed up, because that was a soul place. So people got dressed up and went there. Norwich was shaka. So it was all the man then stepping it out with their locks and teeth. So I was a Royal girl, that's where I went to go, because we got dressed up with my heels, my stilettos, boom, look it out down there. But my man was the Norwich man, he was going to Norwich. So I thought, child, one time I'm gonna go check it out. I went there, heard shaka, and went, no, this is where I've got to be. That beeline, it was all about the beeline, and I haven't changed my mind since. It's all about the beeline. So yeah, Norwich, Royal, those are 2 places that don't exist anymore. They've been knocked down, don't hang around anymore.
In those days, as she said, we follow a sound. Okay, everybody, I used to like Bigs. I didn't like these, because these rough boys go there, you know? They like to fight too much in these dance. So then you have Sir Biggs, you have Sir D's, you have Fat Man, you have Coxon and all them. I never dwell in Coxon.
Well, Coxon was mainly
South London, but you know, them days they were big. So if these is having a party, these followers go to that. Oh, I'm going to these tonight. Or if it's big, oh, I'm going to Biggs tonight. You know, that sort of thing. So we have our own crowd.
I spent a lot of time getting my hair cut or my hair permed. This is in the days of Michael Jackson in Babs's on West Green Road and walking up and down West Green Road. Lots of, you know, and West Green Road is a vibrant road in Tottenham. It's actually, you know, in those days it was at the heart of Tottenham. You know, it's where people went for food and products. Dryken Drayden hair products particularly. Walk down Lawrence Road to West Green Road, where you went to buy Caribbean food, you know, yams and plantain and all that sort of stuff. So I've got a lot of associations with that particular trunk road.
The market on West Green Road was massive because people come from Stamford Hill, Wood Green, everywhere. Wood Green wasn't like Wood Green that we see, so, you know, we used to see today.
It's a very busy area, particularly West Green Road, because it's a major shopping area. So even people who used to live in the area and have moved out or moved away still come back to shop, because it's a very central place where you can get lots of African and Caribbean foods that you wouldn't get in other areas.
Those days you didn't have Caribbean food, because if you have Caribbean food, our life would be better. Most shop is English and they don't do anything right.
One of the ways in which a community shows its presence and its permanence in a locality is by developing its own institutions. And those institutions get reflected in various organizations, but also various buildings and centers and places where their activities can take place. So there are places like the Bernie Grant Centre.
Come to Bernie Grant on Sunday, you see how the Ghanaian community really is. And on a Sunday at Bernie Grant, we do like a fusion Caribbean Sunday. So you've got roast chicken on one hand, then you've got like jollof rice and grilled tilapia and stuff like that.
But alongside that, there are other organisation institutions which are also very, very important, like shops that sell particular goods, whether it's food or clothing or other products.
I remember buying my first single, which was Pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side, Musical Youth. It was huge. And going into Body Music to get this single, which you had to have at that time.
I quite remember on Fridays, Saturdays, the only place you can meet your friend. It's Body Music, where the Body Music was.
I lived in Body Music for a long time. It's funny because I remember that the first few times I went there, I was probably about sort of 12 or 13. I always felt really intimidated because the guy that used to serve, I don't know whether he was on the owned it or whether he was the co-worker, but he was really stern. But you know, over time they get to know you, and I used to go in there usually at least once a week to buy the latest track that I wanted to buy. So Body Music was always really important to me.
Kids used to buy their records and go home and play. Mum and Dad used to buy their records, go home and play, come back each week for the new ones, and that was how it was. Everybody used to come here in the early days to purchase their music. You had from Bob Marley, John Holt, Ken Boothe. At cricketers, you had Viv Richards, Gordon Greenwich. Footballers, you had Clyde Bess, Haddy Coker, all those guys going from a long time coming. They used to come here and buy the thing. Boxers, you had Frank Bruno, you had Lennox Lewis, all these guys used to be here.
Head Start, West Green Road. So I used to go there all the time, and the man that used to run it was the most miserable man ever. How he expect people to come buy books from him, I don't know. His face was always push up, push up, push up, and you'll go, have you got that book? Over there. Oh, yes, over there. Okay. And then I'd come, I think he's gonna smile one day, because I come here so often. Oh, you got the, no, but I can order it for you. I thought, well, that's progress. He can order it for me. He's actually communicating with me.
I quite remember those days. We have a Tottenham Town bakery on West Green Road. That was only West Indian bakery that I remember. That's where we got our bread. And those days, Tottenham area, Bruce Grove area wasn't any marketing area apart from West Green Road. West Green was a very busy but and those days we used to work in the factories and things.
Tottenham Bagel Bakery was always important. Chicken and beef patties. I didn't even ever go for the bagels actually. I wasn't that big a bagel fan, but it was about the patties for me, always.
We're from Ghana. We travel a long way, but here we are. For about 22 years, we've been struggling to build up this company. We started with nothing, but today I think our name is almost everywhere in England. This is my professional when I was back home. The bread we are doing is African bread, and there wasn't any African bread in this country. The only bread that we can buy, similar to our bread, is West Indian bread. And those days, you know, they ordered the bread from Africa, Ghana, to come all the way here before you can taste your own motherland food.
I have powerful memories after school of walking to the library with my sister and spending a lot of time in the library. The library in those days was not Marcus Garvey Leisure Centre, it was on the high road. We didn't have enough money for lots of books. All we had was the Encyclopedia Britannica, which my mum got on hire purchase. So I spent a lot of time just wandering around the libraries, and really, that was really important. It turns out that was really important for me.
There were a good group of friends that we had, and we used to go to the park to play football. And I guess a lot of it is around riding my bike around Broadwater Farm, being banned from going to Broadwater Farm by my mum when we had the riots. She said, "You're not going there anymore," and so I wasn't allowed to go there anymore.
Eventually I moved over onto Broadwater Farm about early 79 or middle 79. It wasn't a nice time between the police and the community, not just in Tottenham, but around England, because St Paul's, Toxteth, Brixton, those were the period of massive change, because the young youth and the police wasn't, you know, wasn't friends. As I think everybody knows, you know, Floyd Jarrett's mum was killed, Mrs Jarrett, and the word kind of rippled around.
When the young people of Broadwater Farm asked for an explanation as to what had happened, they were not given an adequate explanation and were stonewalled. And that was like the seed of the Broadwater Farm disturbances that weekend, which only lasted one night, but left scars that were very, very deep.
There's no doubt what is the most significant thing for me politically in Haringey in terms of my memories, and that's obviously Bernie Grant. Bernie Grant was a real force, and there was something about his courage that enabled us to feel more recognised. And so for me, without question, he is the most significant political figure in Haringey's history.
Haringey in 1982 was a fairly divided society. It had a big division between the richer part of the borough and the poorer part of the borough. There were also lots of divisions between the different races. The black communities didn't get a fair whack of council services or council employment, used to face discrimination when they went to work in private companies and in the factories and the workshops. And then when the unemployment came in, it was mainly the black young people who bore the brunt of the unemployment and the lack of opportunities.
I was born in Britain, second generation. I didn't arrive here. There was nowhere for me or my generation to go. And in a way, my story is as a direct consequence of the sacrifices of people like Bernie, fighting so that some kids could get an opportunity, get an education, move on, go to university. Now, a lot of my generation, that was not a success story, particularly for my brothers who are older than me. They're in their 50s. But those a little bit younger, myself, Patrick Cozier, those are the younger end of that story. Actually, it was a better story for us. We were a bit more successful. Our parents understood the system a bit better by the time we were younger.
This generation of young people that were coming through the school system, they were the second generation of migrants, and they weren't going anywhere else. And their thinking was different to their parents, who may have thought that we're here for a while, we're going to make some money, earn some living, and then go back. This generation was here to stay, and therefore their attitudes and their thinking was completely different, and society and government needed to respond to that, and they weren't doing that at that time.
I became a councillor in 1984, and that's when I first met Bernie Grant, who was already quite an established councillor, but in 1985 he became the leader of the council.
At the time, he was the first ever black leader of a local council, not just in the UK, but anywhere in Europe. And he wasn't just a black face in an appropriate place, but he actually had policies through which he wanted to change things. And he did that very dramatically.
Well, he was larger than life. Big smile, he loved people, very, very gregarious. He always loved people around. He loved young people particularly. He was forever taking groups of young people around the House of Commons. He would go to youth clubs and talk to them. There's film around of him talking to young people, and he would always give young black journalists, for example, and he would always give them an interview because he knew that was one way in which they could demonstrate to their bosses that they could get access to people. So he was always, he was concerned that to help other people up the ladder that he had climbed.
Bernie represented Tottenham in the tough 1980s. Before he became Member of Parliament in 1987, he had been leader of Haringey Council. He had become a figure in British national life that was very, very vilified by the media as a consequence of the 1985 riots. Bernie was also, and I knew Bernie very well, we're actually related. He was Guyanese. His family and mine grew up side by side in Hopetown in Guyana, so we knew each other well. Bernie was very much representing and came from an ethos of having been born in Guyana, raised in the Caribbean, come here as a first-generation immigrant.
I became a councillor, and having become a councillor, I went into the party and I was nominated to be the mayor, so then I became the first black mayor of Haringey. And from there, I started making certain changes in different areas and doing things that didn't happen before.
We put a lot of issues on the agenda. One of the first and the big ones that we put in place was that the employment profile of Haringey Council should reflect the population profile of Haringey. And to that extent, we brought in a whole number of new practices in terms of recruitment, retention, promotion, and so on. If I tell you that on the first day that I walked into the then headquarters of Haringey Council, there were precisely 3 black people working there, then 30 years later you can see that it is now a very much changed organisation.
I think that Black History shouldn't be Black History Month. I think Black history is important. I think African history is important, and I tend to call myself African more than Black because that gives me a country and it puts me somewhere, and I use it more and more now. But our history is global history. It's part of history. I don't understand why it's not taught in school. When I was taught at school, it was sociology. And I remember the one thing they showed me was that there was a tribe and they had necklaces. And it was to do with this whole thing because they showed us Chinese women binding their feet. And they showed us this thing. So it wasn't about the progressiveness. It was somehow to do with how people, form of beauty, they taught it. And it wasn't that it was a bad thing, but it didn't show me my kings and queens.
Black History Month is important in general just because it's not easily available to a lot of black people. A lot of our story, a lot of our history is it's harder to come by, and so to have this sort of nationwide and worldwide, if you bring the February one from America into it, like where we can all learn and we can all share, it helps heighten knowledge across the whole community.
We don't get told an awful lot about that's positive about ourselves as black people, and I think it's vitally important that we educate ourselves in that regard.
Sometimes I worry, frankly, about very, very narrow ideas of what it means to be a black man in Britain. The media stereotype of what it means to be a black man in Britain is basically to wear your trousers around your knees and to act in a certain way. There are a myriad of ways to be a white man, and there are a myriad of ways to be a black man. And the whole point of black history is to have confidence in who you are today, and to stand up for who you are today, and to let no one tell you that you have to be like anybody else. You have to be you and true to you and know where you're from.
It allows, black people a time to really celebrate and reflect on the important people who have gone before them that allow them the degree of happiness and freedom and social mobility that they enjoy today. And like I mentioned before, Walter Tull is someone who I respect to the highest order, because he really went through, and not only did he serve his country to such a high standard and give his life for his country, he actually pushed the boundaries of what black people and mixed race people can achieve in the military, which has opened a door for someone like me and my forebears before me to then push the boundary for future generations. So I'm extremely grateful of those people who have gone before us. And I think unless you know where you come from and your history, then you're never going to know how much you can achieve. I think what's also really important is that Black History Month is not separate from British history. It's very much a part of history. And as we, through Black History Month, highlight those great Black Britons that have gone before us, it won't need to be mentioned in Black History Month, because it will be mentioned in everyday history, because it is so important to the country we live in.
In the past 50 years, I think that black people have come on in leaps and bounds. I mean, we're seeing black people in sort of jobs and in certain industries that we never used to see in the past. And it really makes me feel proud when I'm sort of, one morning on the way to work and I see a very smartly dressed young man or young woman going into a job that looks as though it's, pretty top flight. They're up there, they're doing it, they've achieved it. What they would have had to go through in order to achieve that position and also to maintain it, again, maybe something that would be worth teasing out and discussing, but it is very pleasing, it's very gratifying for me to see that. Those have been really hard-won gains. The sacrifices of people from my parents' generation, generations before that, basically, they laid themselves down so that we could step on them and we could climb the ladder.
I feel that Haringey is a place which makes much more of an effort now to celebrate its heritage and celebrate its communities than I feel it ever did when I was growing up. I never got that sense that Haringey did anything to make us feel proud of being from Haringey. And I know that's something that we are much more proactive about trying to do now. How successful we are, I guess we'd have to ask the young people. I mean, they'll be able to tell us. But I know that there is certainly more of a concerted effort to do that. And I think Haringey, my feeling about Haringey now is that it's a really wonderful place in which to be. I feel proud of Haringey, and I say that wherever I go, because I feel that it is a place of richness, of diversity, of community, and of huge talent. And so I think that my view of Haringey, from being a very kind of bland, naive, no view, to being, oh my God, Haringey isn't the same everywhere. And now I think I have a far more positive and optimistic view of Haringey as an adult working in this community now.
So, my experience of this country, it was hard at first, but we make it happy. And we make it better for those who come after us.